The Muqaddimah Chapter 6 Part 6. A weighty question you have got. Keep, then, to yourself remarkable doubts which have been raised and which can be straightened out with diligence. The letters of the chords S, T, D, 915 T, H, N, T, H, K, H, M, D, S, W, N, T, H, S, Aleph, B, L, M, N, S, A, F, D, Q, R, S, Y, K, 1, M, N, S, A, F, Q, R, S, T, T, H, K, H, D, H, Z, G, H, Sh, T, K, N, A, H, S, Z, W, H, L, S, K, L, M, N, S, Aleph, B, J, D, H, W, Z, H, T, Y. The letters of the question. Aleph, L, Z, 915 A, Y, R, J, T, A, L, M, M, H, D, T, H, Aleph, M, Q, D, Y, M. 561, 225 358. 876 First cycle, 9. S. W1. 2 second cycle, 17, remainder 5. Aleph L3. 4 third cycle, 13, remainder 1. A5 fourth cycle, 9. Z6. Y. M7. 8 fifth cycle, 17, remainder 5. Aleph L9. 10 sixth cycle, 13, remainder 1. KH. L11. 12 seventh cycle, 9. QH 13. 14 eighth cycle, 17, remainder 5. Z. T15. 16 ninth cycle, 13, remainder 1. FS 17. 18 10th cycle, 9. N. Aleph 19. 20 11th cycle, 17, remainder 5, 26 52. DHN 21. 22 12th cycle, 13, remainder 1, 28. GH 23 32 65. R Aleph 24. 25 first result, 9. YB 26. 27 second result, 17, remainder 5, 635 5896. SHK 28. 29 third result, 13, remainder 1. 58. D30 65. B31. T32. H33. Aleph 34. L35. J36. D37. 38. MTHL Aleph. L50. Aleph 41 916. T, W, N, Aleph, Q, S, B, X, R, Aleph, Aleph, R, S, Aleph, T, Q, B, Aleph, R, Q, Aleph, A, Aleph, R, M 917, H, R, H, 918 liters, D, Aleph, R, S, H, Alf 919, L, D, Y, F, S, R, Aleph, H, M, T, Aleph, L, L. Their period is according to 25, then 23 twice, then 21 twice, until one gets to the one at the end of the verse. 920 all the letters are moved. And God knows better. T, R, W, H, N, R, W, H, Aleph, L, Q, D, S, Atif, B, R, Z, S, R, H, Aleph, L, Aleph, D, R, Y, S, F, Aleph, S, T, R, Q, Atif, B, H, Aleph, M, R, T, Q, Atif, Alf, L, A, L, Aleph. 921. End of the discussion of how to find answers in rhymed form from the Zairajah of the world. People have methods other than the Zairajah for finding out answers from questions. However, those answers are not rhymed. I think 922 that the secret of obtaining a rhymed answer from the Zairajah lies in the fact that a verse, namely, that of Malik b. Wuhayb, a weighty question, etc., enters into the operation. Thus, one gets an answer which rhymes on the rhyme letter of Malik's verse. In other methods, there is no rhymed answer. 923. We are going to report this much about other methods of finding answers. A competent practitioner of letter magic said, on learning hidden secrets from letter connections. 924. Let it be known to you, God guide us and you. 925 that the following letters are the basis for answers to any problem. They produce the answers through total division. 926 There are 43 letters, as one can see. Aleph, W, L, Aleph, A, Z, S, Atif, L, M, K, H, Y, D, L, Z, Q, T, Aleph, F, D, H, S, R, N, G, H, Sh, R, Aleph, K, K, Y, B, M, D, B, J, T, L, H, H, D, T, H, L, T, H, Aleph. Some excellent man has worked these letters into the form of a verse in which every double consonant stands for 2 letters. He called the verse the pole. It runs. A weighty question you have got. Keep, then, to yourself. Remarkable doubts which have been raised and which can be straightened out with diligence. 927. If one wants to produce the answer from the question, one must eliminate the letters of the question that are repeated and set down those that remain. Then, one eliminates one letter that is similar to a letter of the question, from the basic verse, the pole, for each remaining letter of the question. One sets down what remains. Then, one mixes the 2 remainders together in one line. One begins by taking as the first letter, one from the remainder from the basic verse, and as the second, one from the remainder from the question, and so forth, until the 2 remainders are finished, or until one of them is finished before the other. In the latter case, one leaves the rest as it is. If the number of the letters that come out after the mixing agrees with the number of the letters in the basic verse, before elimination, the operation is correct. Then, one adds to them 5 ends, in order to have the musical scales balanced and to have a complete complement of 48 letters. With those letters, one fills a table of squares. The end of the first line is the beginning of the second, and the rest is moved as it is, and so forth, until the table is filled and the first line reoccurs. The letters in the region follow each other in proportion to the motion. Then, one finds out the chord of each letter through square division by the smallest aliquot part found in it, 927, and one puts each chord opposite its letter. Then, one finds out the elemental relations for the letters of the table and indicates their natural power, their spiritual scales, their psychic dispositions, and their principal bases from the table which has been composed for the purpose and which looks as follows, 928. Bases, dispositions, scales, powers. 360 87 100 0900 1510 4b 103 879 437 225 j 986 280 400 40 2700 95D 45 27 10 9 94 H 504 110 2W 2598 Z 1110 1W Dispositions Results 222 Scales T 33 Principal Base K Powers 344 455 566 77 688 799 800 900 Then, 929 one takes the chord of each letter after multiplying it by the bases of the four kadis of the celestial spheres. One should avoid what is adjacent to the kadis and also the sawakuit, 930 because their relationship is confused. The result here is the first degree of diffusion 931 then, one takes the total of the elements and subtracts from it the bases of the generated things. There remain the bases of the world of creation, after it has been exposed to the moments of creation. Then, there are transferred to it some abstractions from matter, the elements that constitute matter. The result is the middle horizon of the soul. The first degree of diffusion is subtracted from the total of the elements. There remains 932 the world of mediation. It has to do with the world of simple beings, and not with those of composite ones. The world of mediation is then multiplied by the middle horizon of the soul. The result is the most high horizon. To it, the first degree of diffusion is transferred. Then, the first of the elements basically constituting matter is subtracted from the fourth degree of diffusion. There remains the third degree of diffusion. The total of the particulars of the elements is always multiplied by the fourth degree of diffusion. The result is the first world of particularizatio. The result of the multiplication of the second element with the second degree of diffusion is the second world of particularizatio, that of the third with the third is the third, and that of the fourth with the fourth is the fourth world of particularizatio. The worlds of particularizatio are added up and subtracted from the world of totality. There remain the worlds of abstraction. They are divided by the most high horizon. The result is the first particular. The remainder is divided by the middle horizon. The result is the second particular. The remainder is the third. The fourth here is fixed for the fourth division. If one wants more than 4 divisions, one must increase the number of the worlds of particularizatio, that of the degrees of diffusion, and that of the magic squares containing letters in their numerical value. God guide us and you. Likewise, if the world of abstraction is divided by the first degree of diffusion, the result is the first particular of the world of composition, and so forth to the end of the last degree of the world of existence. This should be understood and contemplated. God is guide and helper. Another method to find the answer is this. A competent practitioner of letter magic said, "Let it be known to you, God strengthen us and you with a spirit coming from him that the science of letters is an important science. The scholar who knows it comes to know things that he would not be able to know with the help of any other science in the world. The practice of the science of letter magic requires certain conditions. With its help, the scholar may discover the secrets of creation and the inner workings of nature. Thus, he learns the two results of philosophy, which are letter magic and its sister, alchemy. The veil of the unknown is lifted for him. He thus learns the contents of the secret recesses of the heart. A number of people in the Maghrib have been observed 933 to have a knowledge of the science of letter magic. They have produced remarkable and extraordinary things and have been active in the world of existence with the help of God. It should be known that every virtue depends on exertion. A good habit, together with patience, is the key to everything good, just as a lack of skill and haste are the beginning of all failure. I say, if one wants to know the power of each letter of the alphabet 934 the alphabet, to the last number, and this is the beginning of the science of letters, one must look for the number that belongs to each letter. This degree, which means harmony for the letters, constitutes the power that a particular letter possesses with regard to the corporealia. The number is then multiplied by itself. The result is the power that a particular letter possesses with regard to the spiritualia. It is the chord of the particular letter. This cannot be done with letters that have diacritical points. It can be done only with those that have no diacritical points, because the letters with diacritical points have degrees of meaning which will be explained later on 935. It should be known that the form of every letter has a corresponding form in the world on high, the divine throne. These forms may be moving or stationary, high or low, as is indicated in the proper places on the tables written down in connection with the Zairajas. It should be known that the powers of the letters fall into three categories. The first category is the least important one. It is a power that becomes manifest after the letters have been written down. Such a letter is thus written down for a spiritual world which belongs to that particular letter. Whenever the letter produces a psychic power and concentration of mind, the powers of letters exercise an influence upon the world of the bodies. The second category is the power of the letters in the realm of thought. It is the result of the activation of the spiritualia for the letters. It is a power among the spiritualia on high, and a formal power in the world of corporealia. The third category is what causes the inward, the psychic power to concentrate upon bringing the letter into being. Before a letter is pronounced, it is a form in the soul. After it is pronounced, it is a form among the letters and a power in speech. The natures of the letters are the same as those attributed to all created things, namely, heat and dryness, heat and cold, cold and humidity, and cold-dry. This is the secret of the Ogdoad. Heat combines air and fire. The two are represented by the letters 936 Aleph, H, T, M, F, Sh, DH, J, Z, K, S, Q, TH, and Z. Cold combines earth and water, D, H, L, A, R, K, H, G, H, B, W, Y, N, S, T, and D. Humidity combines air and water, J, Z, K, S, Q, TH, Z, D, H, L, A, R, K, H, and G, H. Dryness combines fire and earth, Aleph, H, T, M, F, Sh, D, H, B, W, Y, N, S, T, and D. This is the relationship and mutual interpenetration of the letters representing the natures and the interpenetration of the particulars of the world within the letters, on high and here below, through the agency of the primary mothers, that is, the four individual natures, elements. If one wants to find out the unknown from a given question, one must ascertain the ascendant of the questioner, or the ascendant of his question. Then, the letters of the four Qadis of the horoscope, 1, 5, 937 7, and 10 must be spelled, Istataku, 938 equally and according to order, and the numbers of the powers and the chords must be found out, as we shall explain. One adds up, establishes proportions, and tries to open up the answer. Thus, one will find what one is looking for, either clearly expressed or implied. The same is the case with any question one may happen to have to explain. If one wants to discover the powers of the letters of the ascendant, together with the name of the questioner and the object, one must add up the numerical values of the letters, according to the great calculation. 939. The ascendant, let us assume, is Aries. And the fourth sign after Aries, 940, is Cancer, the seventh Libra, and the 10th Capricorus, which is the strongest of the Cardis. The article that goes with the name of each sign is omitted. One notes which rational numbers placed in their circle belong to each house of the zodiac. Then, all the parts of multiples in the proportions resulting from istatacue are eliminated. Under each letter, the number which belongs to it in this connection is written down. Then, one follows the same procedure with regard to the numerical values of the letters of the four elements and the number that belongs to them. All these numbers are written as letters. The Cardis, powers, and dispositions 941 are arranged in a mixed line. One spells the letters out and multiplies whatever must be multiplied, in order to find out the various scales. One sums up and tries to open up the answer. Thus, the hidden thought and its answer will be found. For instance, let us assume that the ascendant is Aries, Al-Hamal, as mentioned before. It is written down, in unconnected letters, HML. The numerical value of H is 8, which can be divided by 2, 4, and 8. It thus yields D, 4, B, 2, and Aleph, 1. The numerical value of M is 40, which can be divided by 2, 4, 8, 10, and 20. It thus yields, to be precise, M, 40, K, 20, Y, 10, H, 5, D, 4, and B, 2. The numerical value of L is 30, which can be divided by 2, 2/3, 3, 5, 6, and 10. It thus yields, K, 20, Y, 10, W, 6, H, 5, and J, 3. The same is done with all the letters of the question and the name in each word which happens to occur, in connection with the problem. The chords are found by dividing the square of each letter by its smallest aliquot part. 942. For instance, the numerical value of D is 4, the square of 4 is 16. This number is to be divided by its smallest aliquot part, namely, 2. Thus, the chord of D is 8. Each chord, then, is placed opposite its letter. Then, the elemental relationships are found out, as has been mentioned before in connection with the explanation of the spelling method of the great calculation. They have a foundation useful for finding them out from the nature of the letter and the nature of the field of the table in which the letter occurs, as was mentioned by the Sheikh for the benefit of those who know the technical terminology. Deductions that can be drawn with the help of letter systems as to deeply hidden thoughts. This goes as follows: if someone asks what is the sickness of the patient, the cause of whose disease is not known, and what medicine will be appropriate for its cure, one orders the person who asks the question to name something that can be applied to the name of the unknown sickness, so that the word he names can be made the foundation of the operation. The word is spelled out, istatacue, together with the name of the ascendant, the elements, the questioner, the day, and the hour, if one wants to go thoroughly into the question. If not, one restricts oneself to the word that the questioner says, and uses it, as we shall explain. For instance, the questioner says horse, Faraz. The numerical value of the three letters, FRS, with their rational aliquot parts is set down. The numerical value of is 80, 943, which has the aliquot parts M, 40, K, 20, Y, 10, H, 8, and D, 4. The numerical value of R is 200, which has the aliquot parts Q, 100, N, 50, KH, 25, K, 20, and Y, 10. The numerical value of S is 60, 944, which has the aliquot parts M, 40, L, 30, K, 20, Y, 10, W, 6, and J, 3. W is a perfect number, having the aliquot parts 4, 3, and 2, and so is S, having the aliquot parts 40, 30, 20, and 10. 945. If one simplifies 946 the letters of the words and then finds two elements equal, one assumes that the one that has more letters has superiority over the other. Then, one adds up the number of the letters of the elements in the name of the desired object, together with its letters, without simplification. One does the same with the name of the questioner. One assumes that the greater and stronger number has superiority. Description of how to find out the powers of the elements. Fire, earth, air, water. WJHHRHYYYYKKKKH millimeters NQL. The superiority here goes to the earth. Its nature, cold and dryness, is the nature of the black bile. Thus, one assumes that the sick person suffers from the black bile. After one has composed an appropriate statement from the letters resulting from the breakdown into aliquot parts, it turns out that the throat is the place where the pain is located. The appropriate medicine is a clister, and the appropriate liquid lemon juice. This results from the powers of the numbers of the letters of the word horse. The preceding discussion is a brief, appropriate example. In order to find out the powers of the elements from proper names, one proceeds in the following way. For instance, one takes Muhammad and writes it with unconnected letters, MHMD. Then, one writes down the names of the four elements according to the composition of the celestial sphere. The result will be the letters and number of each element. For instance, fire, earth, air, water. 3 kinds, 3 kinds, 6 kinds, 6 kinds. BBBJJDDDD His Highness WWWZZHHRHKKKLLL millimeters. NNSS questions ORNNHHRH. One will find that the strongest of the elements of the name mentioned is the element of water, because the number of its letters is 20. Therefore, one gives it superiority over the other elements of the name mentioned. One proceeds in the same way with all names. They are then added to their chords, or to the chord attributed to the ascendant in the Zairaja, or to the chord of the verse ascribed to Malik B. Wuhayb, which he made the basis for the mixture of questions and which runs. A weighty question you have got. Keep, then, to yourself. Remarkable doubts which have been raised and which can be straightened out with diligence. 947. This is a famous chord for finding out unknown things. It served as the basis for Ibar Akwam 948 and his colleagues. It is a complete, self-sufficient operation, that works, in all arbitrary instances. The operation with this mentioned chord is as follows: 949. One writes it down with its letters unconnected and mixed with the word of the question according to the technique of breaking down. 950. The number of the letters of this chord, that is, the verse is 43. Because every doubled letter counts as 2. Then, the letters of the questions, which are repeated in the mixing, are eliminated, and one letter which is similar to the letter of the question is eliminated from the basic verse, for each remaining letter of the question. The two remainders are set down on one line, so mixed that the first letter is taken from the remainder of the poll, and the second from the remainder of the question, and so forth, until the two remainders are used up. This yields 43 letters. 5 ends are then added, so that there are 48 letters, and the musical scales are balanced through them. Then, one writes down the remainder in order. If the number of the letters that come out after the mixing agrees with the original number before elimination, the operation is correct. Then, a table of squares is filled with the letters that have been mixed. The end of the first line is the beginning of the second, and so on, until the first line reoccurs. The letters in the region follow each other in proportion to the motion. Then, the chord of each letter is brought out, as was mentioned before. It is put opposite its letters. Then, the elemental relations of the letters of the table are found out, in order to indicate their natural power, their spiritual scales, their psychic dispositions, and their principal bases from the table that has been composed for that purpose. The way to find out the elementary relations is to note what the nature of the first letter of the table is, and what the nature of the field in which it resides is. If the two agree, it is good. If not, a relation between the two letters must be found out. This rule extends to all the letters of the table. Those who know the rules as they have been established in the musical circle can easily prove the correctness of this procedure. Then, 951. One takes the chord of each letter after multiplying it by the bases of the 4 kardis of the celestial sphere, as was mentioned before. One should avoid what is adjacent to the kardis, and also the sawakuit, because their relationship is confused. The result here is the first degree of diffusion. Then, one takes the total of the elements and subtracts from it the bases of the generated things. There remains the base of the world of creation after it has been exposed to the moments of creation. Then, there are transferred to it some abstractions from matter, the elements that constitute matter. The result is the middle horizon of the soul. The first degree of diffusion is subtracted from the total of the elements. There remains the world of mediation. It has to do with the worlds of simple beings and not with those of composite ones. The world of mediation is then multiplied by the middle horizon of the soul. The result is the most high horizon. To it, the first degree of diffusion is transferred. Then, the first of the elements basically constituting matter is subtracted from the fourth degree of diffusion. There remains the third degree of diffusion. The total of the particulars of the elements is always multiplied by the fourth degree of diffusion. The result is the first world of particularizatio. The result of the multiplication of the second element with the second degree of diffusion is the second world of particularizatio. The same is the case with the third and fourth. The worlds of particularizatio are added up and subtracted from the world of totality. There remain the worlds of abstraction. They are divided by the most high horizon. The result is the first particular. From here, the operation is continued until its completion. There are preliminary remarks to it in the books of Ibwashia, Al-Bikolonui, and others. The procedure follows a natural and definite 951, a norm that applies to this and other metaphysical disciplines. The construction of letters irajas, as well as the divine art and philosophical magic center around it. It 952 should be known that all these operations lead only to getting an answer that corresponds to the idea of the question. They do not give information on anything supernatural. They are a sort of witty game, as we mentioned at the beginning of the book 953. Likewise, they do not belong to the science of letter magic, Samaya, as we have explained it. God gives inspiration. He is asked for help. He is trusted. He suffices us. He is a good protector. 29. The science of alchemy 954. This is a science that studies the substance through which the generation of gold and silver may be artificially accomplished, and comments on the operation leading to it. The alchemists acquire knowledge of the tempers and powers of all created things and investigate them critically. They hope that they may thus come upon the substance that is prepared to produce gold and silver. They even investigate the waste matter of animals, such as bones, feathers, hair, 955 eggs, and excrements, not to mention minerals 956. Alchemy, then, comments on the operations through which such a substance may be transformed from potentiality into actuality, as, for instance, by the dissolution of bodies, substances, into their natural components through sublimation and distillation. 957 By the solidification of meltable substances, through calcification, by the pulverizatio of solid materials with the help of pestles and mullers and similar things. The alchemists assume that all these techniques lead to the production of a natural substance which they call the elixir. 958 When some mineral substance, such as lead, tin, or copper, which is prepared, in a manner, and degree, that closely approaches preparedness, in actuality, for receiving the form of gold or silver, is heated in the fire and some quantity of the elixir is added 959 to it, that substance turns into pure gold. In the technical terminology that the alchemists use for purposes of mystification, they give the cover name of spirit to the elixir and that of body to the substance to which the elixir is added. The science that comments on this technical terminology and on the form of the technical operation by which predisposed substances are turned into the form of gold and silver, is the science of alchemy. In both ancient and modern times, people have written works on alchemy. Discussions of alchemy are occasionally ascribed to people who were not alchemists. The chief systematic writer on alchemy, according to the alchemists, is Jabir. B. Higher. Alchemists even consider alchemy Jabir's special preserve and call it the science of Jabir. He wrote 70 treatises on alchemy 960, all of them read like puzzles. It is thought 961 that only those who know all that is in Jabir's treatises can unlock the secrets of alchemy 962. At-Tughra'i, 963 A recent Eastern philosopher, wrote systematic works on alchemy and disputations with alchemists and other philosophers. Maslamor al-Majriti, a Spanish philosopher, wrote on alchemy the Rutbat al-Hakim. He wrote the Rutbah as a counterpart to his work on sorcery and talismans entitled Gayat al-Hakim. He thought that the two arts, alchemy and sorcery, were both results and fruits of philosophy and science, and that those who were not acquainted with them would miss the fruit of scholarship and philosophy altogether. 964. Maslamor's discussion in the Rutbah and the discussions of all the alchemists, in their respective works, employ puzzling means of expression which are difficult for those who have not familiarized themselves with the technical terminology of alchemists to understand. we shall mention the reason why the alchemists had recourse to these cover names and puzzling means of expression. 965 Ibn al-Mughayribi, 966 A leading alchemist, has written alchemical maxims in verses, the rhyme letter of which is each letter of the alphabet, taken up in turn. The verses belong among the most original poetry there is. All of them employ a puzzling manner of expression, and they are, like elusive riddles. They can hardly be understood. Works on alchemy are attributed to Al-Ghazali, 967, but this attribution is not correct, because Al-Ghazali's lofty perceptions would not have permitted him to study, or, eventually, to adopt the errors of alchemical theories. Some alchemical theories and opinions are occasionally attributed to Khalid b. Yazid b. Muawiyah, 968, a stepson of Marwa b. al-Hakam. However, it is very well known that Khalid was an Arab by race and close to the Bedouin attitude. Thus, he was not familiar with the sciences and crafts in general. How, then, could he have known an unusual craft based upon knowledge of the natures and tempers of composite things, when the physical and medical works of scholars who did research on those subjects had not yet appeared and had not yet been translated? The only possibility is that there existed another Khalid b. Yazid among persons versed in the various crafts, and that the mix-up was caused by identical names. I shall pass on here an epistle on alchemy written by Abu Bakr b. Bashru, 969, to Ibn as-Sam. Both were pupils of Maslamah. If considered as carefully as it deserves to be, the discussion of Ibn Bashur, n. will show my 970 attitude toward alchemy. After some introductory remarks in the epistle, which have nothing to do with the subject, Ibn Bashru said, the premises of this noble craft were mentioned by the ancients. All of them were reported by the philosophers. Such premises are knowledge of the generation of minerals, of the creation of rocks and precious stones, and of the different natures of regions and localities. As they are well known, we shall not mention them. But I shall explain to you what one needs to know of this craft. Thus, let us start with that knowledge. It has been said, the students of this science must first know three things. 1. Whether it exists, 2. What brings it into being, and 3. How it comes into being. If the student of alchemy knows these three things well, he achieves his object and knows as much as can be known about this science. As to the problem of the existence of alchemy and the proofs for the forces that bring alchemy into existence, the elixir that we have sent to you is a satisfying answer. The question of what brings alchemy into being implies, according to alchemists, search for the stone that makes the alchemical operation possible. Potentially, the operation may be performed with any conceivable thing, because the potentiality to perform the operation comes from the four natures, elements. It originated from their composition at the beginning and will revert to them at the end. However, there are things that might be used for the operation, only potentially, not actually. This comes about as follows. There are some things that can be decomposed. There are others that cannot be decomposed. Those that can be decomposed can be processed and treated. They are the things that can be transformed from potentiality into actuality. On the other hand, the things that cannot be decomposed cannot be processed and treated, because they have nothing but potentiality in them. They cannot be decomposed, in order to give some of the elements they contain an advantage over the others and to have the power of the bigger elements predominate over the lesser ones. You, may God give you success, must therefore know the most suitable of the decomposable stones that can be used for the operation. You must know its genus, power, action, and which kind of dissolution or solidification, purification, calcification, absorption, or transformation it may be able to effect. People who do not know these basic principles of alchemy will never be successful or achieve any good results. You must know whether the stone can be aided by something else or is sufficient by itself, and whether it is one thing by itself at the beginning or is associated with something else and becomes one thing by itself during the treatment, and is therefore called stone. You must also know how it works, how much its components must weigh and what times are suitable for it, how the spirit is inserted and the soul made to enter into it, whether fire can separate the soul from the stone after it has been inserted in it, if not, why not, and what makes it necessary that it be that way. This is what one wants to know. It should be understood and realized that all philosophers have praised the soul and thought that it is the soul that governs, sustains, and defends the body and is active in it. For, when the soul leaves the body dies and gets cold. It cannot move or defend itself, because there is no life in it and no light. I have mentioned the body and the soul only because this craft, alchemy, is similar to the body of man, which is built up by regular meals 971 and which persists and is perfected by the living, a luminous soul, which enables the body to do the great and mutually contradictory things that only the living power of the soul can do. Man suffers from the disharmony of his component elements. If his elements were in complete harmony and, thus, not affected by accidents and inner contradictions, the soul would not be able to leave his body. Man would then live eternally. Praised be he who governs all things, he is exalted. It should be known that the nature's elements, producing the alchemical operation constitute a quality that pushes forward at the beginning, and a process of emanation requiring an end. When they have reached this limit, they cannot be transformed back into the state that formed the starting point of their composition. As we stated at the outset with regard to man 972, the natures of the substance had been separate, but now they adhere to each other and have become one thing. Similar to the soul in power and activity, and similar to the body in having composition and pulse 973, there is a strange thing about the actions of the elements. It is the weak element that is powerful, since it has power over the decomposition, composition, and completion of things. It is in this sense that I use the words powerful and weak. Change and non-being in the first composition occur only as the result of disharmony among the component elements. They do not occur in the second composition, because there then is harmony among the component elements. An early philosopher alchemist has said, decomposition and division mean life and duration, as far as the alchemical operation is concerned, while composition means death and non-being. This statement has a subtle meaning. The philosopher meant by life and duration its 974 transformation from non-existence into existence. As long as it remains in the state of its first composition, it is, no doubt, non-being. But when the second composition takes place, non-being no longer exists. Now, the second composition comes about only after decomposition and division. Thus, decomposition and division are peculiar to the alchemical operation. If it 975 is applied to the soluble body, substance, it spreads in it, because it has no form, since it has come to take in the body the place of the soul which has no form. This is because it has no weight as far as the substance is concerned. You will see this, if God, He is exalted, wills. you must realize that mixing a fine thing with another fine thing is easier than mixing a coarse thing with another coarse thing. I have in mind here the similarity in form among spirits, on the one hand, and bodies, substances, on the other, for it is the form of things that causes their union. I mention this to you, so that you may know that the alchemical operation is more agreeable and simpler if it is undertaken with fine spiritual elements than if it is undertaken with coarse corporeal substances. It is logical that stones are stronger in their resistance to fire than spirits. Likewise, gold, iron, and copper are observed to offer more resistance to fire than sulfur, mercury, and other spirits. Therefore, I say, the substances were spirits at the beginning. When the heat of the natural process, kiya, affects them, they are transformed by it into coarse, coherent substances. Fire is not able to consume them, because they are exceedingly coarse and coherent. When an exceedingly great amount of fire is applied to them, it turns them again into spirits, as they had been when they were first created. If fire, then again, affects the fine spirits, they flee and are not able to endure it. Thus, you must know what brought the substances to their particular condition and what brought the spirits to theirs. That is the most important knowledge you can have. I say, the spirits flee and are burned, because of their combustibility and fineness. They became combustible because of their great share of humidity. When fire notices humidity, it attaches itself to it, because humidity is Area 975 and, thus, similar to fire. The fire does not stop eating it until the humidity is consumed. The same applies to substances when, noticing the approach of fire, they flee. 976 because they have little coherence and are coarse. But they are not combustible, because they are composed of earth and water, which offers resistance to fire, in that the fine components of water unite with its coarse components, through a long process of cooking which softens and mixes things. For anything that is annihilated through fire 977 is annihilated only because its fine components separate, under the influence of fire, from its coarse components, and its parts merge with each other without dissolution and adaptation. Thus, the resulting combination and interpenetration is mere aggregation, not real mixture. Therefore, the fine and the coarse elements are as easily separated, under the influence of fire, as water and oil are, or similar things. I describe this merely so that you may learn from it the facts about composition and opposition with regard to the elements. If you have a sufficient knowledge of this, you know as much about the elements as can be known by you. You must, further, know that the mixtures, which are the elements of alchemy, agree with one another. They are derived from one substance. One order and one treatment unite them all. Nothing strange enters into either a single part or into the whole of it. 978 In this sense, the philosopher has said, if you have a good knowledge of the treatment and composition of the elements, and if you do not permit anything strange to enter into them, you 979 have a good knowledge of what you want to know well and definitely, since the alchemical element is one element, and contains nothing that is strange to it. He who brings something strange into it falsifies it and commits an error. It should be known that if a cognate substance is properly dissolved for this alchemical element, so that it becomes similar to it in respect of fineness and subtleness, the alchemical element expands in it and follows it wherever it goes. As long as substances remain coarse and rough, they cannot expand or be paired, and they can dissolve only with the help of spirits. You, may God guide you, should understand this statement in that sense. May God guide you, should know that such dissolution in the animal substance is the truth, which neither perishes nor decreases. It is the thing that transforms the elements, holds them, and produces for them marvelous colors and blossoms. Not every substance dissolves in this way. 980, which is the way of complete dissolution, because it is contrary to life. It dissolves only in so far as the process of dissolution is agreeable to it and serves to defend it against the burning action of fire, until it is no longer coarse and the elements are transformed to the degree of fineness or coarseness possible for them. When the substances have reached their limit of dissolution and refinement, they then obtain a power that holds, immerses, 981, transforms, and pervades. An alchemical operation, the test of whose truthfulness does not appear at the beginning, is no good. It should be known that the cold nature dries things out and ties down their humidity, while heat causes the humidity of things to appear and ties down their dryness. I have singled out heat and cold because they are active, and humidity and dryness, because they are passive. The passivity of the two opposites toward each other creates and generates the substances. Heat, however, does so more actively than cold, because the cold cannot transport and move things, while heat is the cause of motion. When the heat that causes generation is weak, it never achieves anything. Correspondingly, if the heat affecting a thing is excessive, and there is no cold there, it burns the thing and destroys it. For this reason, some cold is needed in alchemical operations, so that the power of opposites may be balanced and there may be protection against the heat of fire. There is nothing the philosophers have warned against more insistently than burning fires. They have commanded alchemists to cleanse the elements and the breaths, to remove their dirt and humidity, and to keep away their harmful actions and uncleanliness from fires. That is the sound basis of their doctrine and treatment. The alchemical operation begins with fire and ends with fire. Therefore, the philosophers have said, beware of burning fires. By that they meant that one should keep away the harmful actions that go with fire. Otherwise, two kinds of harmful actions would combine against the substance and speed its destruction. Also, anything may suffer annihilation and corruption through itself. 982, because its elements are opposed to each other and there is disharmony in it. It thus stands in the middle between two things. 983, and does not find anything to strengthen and aid it, but the harmful actions overpower and destroy it. It should be known that the sages have mentioned that spirits return repeatedly to bodies, substances, so that they may have greater coherence with them and greater strength to fight the fire. Since they, the spirits, come into contact with the fire at the moment of union, I mean here elemental fire. This should be realized. We are now going to speak about the stone that makes the alchemical operation possible, as mentioned by the philosophers. They have held different opinions about it. Some have thought that it is to be found in animals, some have thought in plants, some have thought in minerals, and, according to some, in everything. We do not have to examine these claims and enter into a dispute concerning them with the people who make them, because that would be a very long discussion. I have already stated 984 that the alchemical operation might potentially be performed with anything, because the elements exist in everything. This is so. We want to know what produces the alchemical operation, both potentially and actually. Therefore, we turn to the statement of Al-Hari 985 that 986. All dyeing consists of two kinds. One may use a substance such as saffron, which is used to dye a white garment. The saffron eventually changes in it, vanishing and being decomposed. The second kind of dyeing is transformation of the substance of one thing into the substance and color of something else. Thus trees, for instance, transform the soil into themselves, and animals the plants, so that eventually the soil becomes plants, and the plants animals. This can come about only with the help of the living spirit and the active nature, Kiya, which has the ability to generate substances and change essences. If this be so, I say that the alchemical operation must be either in animals or in plants. Proof of this is that both animals and plants need food by their very nature, in order to subsist and to materialize. Plants do not have the same fineness and power that animals have. Therefore, the sages rarely turned to them. Animals are the last and final stage of the three permutations. Minerals turn into plants, and plants into animals, but animals cannot turn into anything finer than themselves. They may, however, revert back to greater coarseness. Furthermore, animals are the only things in the world to which the living spirit attaches itself. Now, the spirit is the finest thing there is in the world. It attaches itself to animals only because it is similar to them. The spirit existing in plants is insignificant. It is coarse and thick. In addition, it is submerged and hidden in plants, because it is coarse itself and because the substance of plants is coarse. Plants, thus, cannot move, because they themselves are coarse and because their spirit is coarse. The mobile spirit is much finer than the hidden one. The former accepts food. It can be moved, and it can breathe. The latter can only accept food. As compared with the living spirit, it occupies no better position than that of earth as compared to water. This is how plants compare with animals. Therefore, it is much more advanced and much simpler to use animals for the alchemical operation. The intelligent person who knows this must try the method that is easy. He must not do what he fears might be difficult. It should be known that the sages have divided living beings into mothers the elements, and young ones the generated beings. That is well known and easy to understand. The sages thus divided the elements and the generated beings into living ones and dead ones. They assumed that anything that moves is active and living and that anything that is stationary is passive and dead. They made this division for all things, for the meltable substances and the mineral drugs. Anything that is meltable in fire and volatile and combustible, they called living. Anything of the opposite qualities, they called dead. The animals and plants that can be decomposed into the four elements, they called living. Those that cannot, they called dead. Then, they searched all the living groups. Among the things that can be decomposed into four components obvious to the eye, they did not find anything suitable for alchemy. The only suitable thing they found was the stone which is in animals. They studied its genus. Eventually, they came to know it. They took it and treated it. As a result, they obtained the desired qualities from it. Similar qualities may be obtained in minerals and plants, after various mineral or vegetable drugs are combined, mixed, and then separated again. There are plants, such as saltwort, 987 that can be decomposed into certain of the four components. Minerals contain substances, spirits, and breaths which, when they are mixed and treated, produce something that may exercise an influence. We have tried all that out. Animals are much more advanced. Their treatment is much simpler. Thus, one must know what is the stone that exists in animals, and how it can be found. we have made it clear that animals are the highest of generated things. In the same sense, whatever is composed from them, animals, is finer than plants, 988, just as plants are finer than earth. Plants are finer than earth, because they are created from its 989 pure essence and fine substance. Therefore, they are necessarily fine and subtle. The animal stone is in the same position, among animals, as plants are in the soil. In general, there is nothing in living beings that can be decomposed into 4 elements except that stone. This statement must be understood. It can hardly remain concealed from anyone except an obviously stupid person who has no intelligence. I have thus informed you about the quiddity and genus of the stone. Now I am going to explain to you the different kinds of treatment. Thus, we shall give you your fair share of information, as we have taken it upon ourselves to do, if God praised be He, wills. With God's blessing, here is the treatment. Take the noble stone. Deposit it in the cucurbit and alembic. Separate its 4 elements, which are water, air, earth, and fire. They are substance, spirit, soul, 990 and dying. When you have separated the water from the earth and the air from the fire, keep each one apart in its own vessel. Take the dregs, the sediment at the bottom of the vessel. Wash it with hot fire, until the fire has removed its blackness, and its coarseness and toughness have disappeared. Blanch it carefully and evaporate the superfluities of the humidities concealed 991 in it. It will thus become white water, which contains no darkness, dirt, or disharmony. Then, turn to those primary elements that are distilled from it. Cleanse them, too, of blackness and disharmony. Wash them repeatedly and sublimate them, until they become fine, subtle, and pure. When you have done this, God has given you success. Then, start with the composition around which the operation centers. This is as follows. Composition comes about only through pairing, marriage, and putrefaction. Pairing, marriage, is the mixture of the fine with the coarse. Putrefaction is purgation 992 and pulverizatio undertaken so that the various parts may mix, as water does, with each other and form one thing containing no confusion 993 or deficiency in itself. In this condition, the coarse components have the strength to hold the fine ones back, the spirit has the strength to oppose the fire and can tolerate it, and the soul has the strength to immerse itself and slip into the substances. This situation exists only after composition. When the soluble substance is paired with the spirit, it mingles with it in all its parts, and the parts interpenetrate, because they are similar to each other. Thus, the resulting mixture becomes one thing. The fact that the spirit is mixed with the body makes it necessary for the spirit to be affected by well-being, corruption, duration. 994 and persistence, like the body. Likewise, when the soul mixes with substance and spirit, and penetrates them through the services of the alchemical treatment, all the parts of the soul, 995 mingle with all the parts of the 2 other things, that is, spirit and substance. Thus, the soul and the 2 become one thing that contains no disagreement and is in the position of the universal particular whose elements are intact and whose parts are in harmony with each other. When this compound meets the soluble substance, and fire is constantly applied to it, and the humidity in it is brought to the surface, it melts in the soluble substance. Humidity implies combustion and an attachment of the fire to itself. But when the fire wants to attach itself to it, its admixture of water prevents it from union with the soul, for fire does not unite with oil, until it is pure. Likewise, water implies aversion to fire. Thus, when fire is constantly applied to it and wants to evaporate it, the dry substance which is mixed with the water keeps it back inside and prevents it from evaporation. Thus, the substance is the cause of holding the water is the cause of the duration of the oil is the cause of the persistence of the dyeing, and the dyeing is the cause of the appearance of color and the indication of oiliness in dark things that have no light and no life. This is the right substance. The alchemical operation comes about in this way. The egg 996 about which you have inquired, is the thing the sages call egg. It is what they have in mind, when they speak about the egg, and not the egg of the chicken. It should be known that the sages did not choose an inappropriate name by calling it egg. They called it egg, because it can be compared to an egg. I asked Maslamor about it one day when I was alone with him. I said to him, "O excellent sage, tell me, why did the sages call the animal compound egg? Was that something arbitrary on their part, or was there some reason that caused them to do so?" He replied, "Indeed, there is deep meaning in it." I said, "O sage, what advantage did they see, and what indication of a connection with alchemy did they find in comparing it with an egg and calling it egg?" He said, "Because the egg is similar to and related to the compound." Think it over, and the meaning of it will appear to you. I remained with him, thinking it over, but I could not get at the meaning of it. When he saw that I was deep in thought and my soul immersed in it, he grasped my arm, nudged me slightly, and said to me, "O Abu Bakr, it is because of the relationship that exists between the two with regard to the quantity of colors at the time of the mixture and composition of the elements." When he said that, the darkness that had enveloped my mind left me. A light lit up my heart and gave my intellect the power to understand it. I stood up and went home, thanking God, He is exalted for it. I constructed a geometrical figure to illustrate it. It proves the correctness of Maslamor's statement. I am writing it down for you in this book, Epistle. For instance, when the compound is complete and perfect, the element of air in it is to the element of air in the egg, in the same proportion as the element of fire in the former is to the element of fire in the latter. The same applies to the two other elements, earth and water. Now, I say, two things that in this manner are proportionate to each other are similar to each other. For example, assume that the plane of the egg is HZWH 997. If we want that, we take the smallest element 998 of the compound, that of dryness, and add to it the same amount of the element of humidity. We treat the two, until the element of dryness absorbs the element of humidity and takes over its power. This discussion contains a certain secret hint which, however, will not remain concealed from you. Then we add to the two the same amount as theirs, of the spirit, that is, water. Thus, the whole consists of 6 equal parts. Then we treat the whole and add to it the same amount of the element of air, which is the soul. That is 3 parts. Thus, the whole consists of 9 parts equal in power to dryness. Under each of 2 sides of this compound whose nature, element, encloses the plane of the compound, we then put 2 elements. The first 2 sides that enclose the plane of the compound are assumed to be those of the elements of water and air. They are the 2 sides AJD. 999. The plane is ABJD. Correspondingly, the 2 sides that enclose the plane of the egg, and which represent water and air are 2 sides of the plane, HZWH. Now, I say, the plane ABJD is similar to the plane HZWH, the element of air which is called soul. 1000 The same applies to the side BJ of the plane of the compound. The sages never called anything by the name of something else, except when the first thing could be compared to the other. Words for an explanation of which you have asked me are Holy Land. 1001 It means the combination of the higher and the lower elements, copper, which is the substance, the blackness of which has been removed and which was cut in pieces until it became an atom, and was then colored red with copperas, until it came to be copper. 1002 Magnesia 1003 is the stone of the alchemists, in which the spirits are frozen and which is brought forth by the higher nature in which the spirits are emprisoned, in order to fight the fire, and protect them against it. Furfura, purple, is a perishable red color that is produced by nature. Kiaya. Lead is a stone that has 3 powers of different individualities which, however, are similar to each other in form and genus. One of them is spiritual, luminous, and clear. It is the active power. The second is psychic. It moves and has sensual perception. However, it is coarser than the first power. Its center is below that of the first power. The third power is an earthy power. It is solid and astringent. It turns back toward the center of the earth because of its gravity. It is the power that holds the spiritual and psychic powers together and encloses them. All the remaining words are innovations created in order to confuse the ignorant. He who knows the basic premises can dispense with everything else. That is all you have asked me about. I have explained it to you in this epistle. We hope with God's help that you will achieve your wish. Farewell. Here ends the discussion by Ibn Bashru, one of the great pupils of Maslam or al-Majriti, the Spanish authority on alchemy, letter magic, and sorcery, for the 3rd, 9th century and later times. One can see how all the expressions used by alchemists tend to be secret hints and puzzles. 1004 Scarcely to be explained or understood. This is proof of the fact that alchemy is not a natural craft. The truth with regard to alchemy, which is to be believed and which is supported by actual fact, is that alchemy is one of the ways in which the spiritual souls exercise an influence and are active in the world of nature. It may belong among the miraculous acts of divine grace, if the souls are good. Or it may be a kind of sorcery, if the souls are bad and wicked. 1005 It is obvious that alchemy may materialize as a miraculous act of divine grace. It may be sorcery, because the sorcerer, as has been established in the proper place, may change the identity of matter by means of his magic power. 1006 People think that a sorcerer must use some substance in order for his magical activity to take place. Thus, certain animals may be created from the substance of earth, of hair, or of plants, or, in general, from substances other than their own. That, for instance, happened to the sorcerers of Pharaoh with their ropes and sticks. 1007 It also is reported, for instance, of the Negro and Indian sorcerers in the far south and of the Turks in the far north, that by sorcery they force the air to produce rain, and other things. 1008 Now, since alchemy is the creation of gold in a substance other than that of gold, it is a kind of sorcery. The famous sages who discussed the subject, men such as Jabir, Maslam, and their non-Muslim predecessors, followed this line. Therefore, they used puzzling expressions. They wanted to protect alchemy from the disapproval that religious laws express for the various kinds of sorcery. It was not because they were reluctant to communicate it to others, as was thought by people who did not investigate the matter thoroughly. One may compare the fact that Maslamor called his book on alchemy Rutbat al-Hakim, while he called his book on sorcery and talismans Gayat al-Hakim. He wanted to intimate that the subject of the Gayar is a general one, whereas the subject of the Rutbar is a restricted one, for Gayar final goal is a higher stage in research than Rutbar degree, rank. The problems of the Rutbar are in a way part of the problems of the Gayar, or deal with the same subjects. Maslamor's discussion of the two disciplines clarifies what we have said. Later on, we shall explain that those who assume that the achievements of alchemy are the result of a natural craft are wrong. 1009 God is wise and knowing. 1010.